Greetings. Good evening to you. Glad to see you all out tonight for calendar Expo June 9th, 2025. I don't know what it is in Hebrew timing, and I think we'd have some discussion about that if I did. I wanted to remind you yesterday we set down some guidelines for these events, and well, I click people in here. We're going to have a little opening or introduction each time, see if there's an announcement or something somebody just needs to say. And then we're going to go for the rest of the hour with the presentation. After that hour's over, I'm going to very rudely break in and I'm going to ask if there are questions or comments about this. Now, I was thinking about the just a minute ago, thinking about the implication or maybe just the complaint that we had yesterday that personal names are brought in and personal insults. And back of my brain, I asked Yah about that. I don't know if it was him or not that talked to me, but maybe it was the angel of Yah. And what I heard was, ha, 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 you are nothing but simpletons. You know nothing. And I got to thinking about that. I thought, could that be a word, or maybe it's just my own thinking? Because there was a time some years ago when I thought I knew everything there was to know about this subject. And here in the last year, I found that I know nothing. I'm simply a simple simpleton with very limited amount of brain. But I do have a theory. I do have a great theory, and so do you. And this is what we have. This is what we have, theories. We don't know the answer, even if we think we do, even if we've exhausted all the Earth's resources on this subject, even if we had a special look into whatever issues are going to pop out of the ground here in the next 50 years. We still don't know it all. We're still very limited, with the exception maybe one or two people here, I'd say. So let's keep that in mind. Let's theorize our way through, and then let's try to make the questions questions, the comments comments, and leave it at that, realizing that our understanding is limited. Okay, okay. Well, we left off last night, and I'm thinking it's Marissa's opportunity to share. We were with Jeremy most of yesterday and Katrina a little bit. So I'm just going to turn it over now to Jeremy Peiers for him to do with it as he will. Okay, Jeremy, go for it.
Hey, shalom, brother. Thank you. And yes, I absolutely agree with everything you said. And yeah, none of us know anything. And it's only because of Yahuwah that we each have a different piece of this puzzle, which is why it is very important to come together and discuss these things. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you there, brother. So yeah, today is our part two, and I just wanted to give a quick recap, just really quick, about our last our what we went over our last part in part one. And then Marissa had her presentations about 20 minutes, and then I will continue on a little bit there, which will be about 30 minutes. So that'll be within the hour. And we do have one more that we do want to ask, maybe if we can have a part three, because we do have one more presenter that we know is not going to have enough time to make it in this evening. So
Absolutely. Sure, sure.
awesome.
Everybody can
Thank
come
you,
back
brother.
like tomorrow night.
Yeah, yeah, I want to confer with her just to make sure it's
All
going to
right.
work with her. But yeah, yeah. So thank you for that opportunity. Um, so let me let me share the screen here. Get right into it. So real quick, we'll go into the recap. Here, I'll turn off that so you can probably see better. Maybe not. Okay, so quick recap. So we covered it in Genesis 1, 1 through 2, showing the time before the counting of the days, which is the void of time. We covered Jubilees, showing when we start our year, or excuse me, when we start our yearly count at the beginning of creation, which is day 1, week of creation. And it also shows that our yearly Sabbaths are divided. We showed the Dead Sea Scrolls 4Q394 is showing us a day is added after the last Sabbath of the year. We went over 4Q320, how it's not about moon phases, but about the stars, which Marissa's going to go over in her presentation. We see the verses throughout the scriptures that are showing the heads of the months and their importance. We see the tekufas are the equinoxes and solstices, which they call today, which are marking day 4 of the week. And we see all throughout the scriptures, we see the sun and stars are bringing in the years, no moons. We see the 4 seasonal heads of the months are Sabbath days and the days of remembrance ordained by Noah in Jubilees 6. And so the scripture says we should all remain teachable. So those who are not here to learn, this may not be for you, because I know there's a lot of controversial information in here, and we're just doing our best to show it through scriptures. So let me get to the other screen here. Oh, sorry. Actually, this is where Marissa will come in. So let me get hers up here. And can everybody see this? And Marissa, if whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I just want to say thank you, Jackson, for allowing us to share our perspective on your platform. I've been super excited to share this with you guys, so hold on tight. It'll be a good 20 minutes. I'm going to try to read it fast, um, but just in knowing that it would be good to go back and listen to the video when Jackson posts it on YouTube so that you can make sure you fully understand that you didn't miss anything. All right. So I want to walk us through how scripture, the heavens, and the priestly service all confirm the beginning of the year and the pattern of Yahuwah's calendar. There are 2 significant markers that fall within the 7 days between the 52nd Sabbath of the old year and the first Sabbath of the new year. And so those 2 pillars is what Jeremy has up on the screen. So the first one is 316, as we know it on the Gregorian calendar. Our fellowship calls this the divider day. I know some people have heard it called the equilux day, and I'll get to explaining that too. So the equilux is when day and night appear equal from the earth. So from our perspective, we are seeing the atmospheric lensing and the light refraction from our existence here on earth. That's our experience. And the other significant marker is 320, is the equinox day. And that's when day and night are equal by heavenly measure, the straight line balance seen from above. These 2 days serve as posts within a sacred 7-day window, which corresponds to the consecration of the priests, the sanctification of the altar, and the glory of Yahuwah entering the temple. In Ezekiel 43, we are shown the glory of Yahuwah entering the temple from the east, filling his house with light and power. Ezekiel 43 says, "Afterward, he brought me to the gate, even the gate that looketh toward the east. And behold, the glory of the Elohim of Yasharel came from the way of the east, and his voice was like a noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory. And the glory of Yahuwah came into the house by the way of the gate, whose prospect is toward the east. So the Spirit took me up and brought me into the inner court, and behold, the glory of Yahuwah filled the house. This
Is that what our
vision,
Bible is?
huh? Excuse me?
I think he was just unmuted. Go ahead,
Oh,
continue.
okay. All right. All right. So this vision aligns with what happens during this 7-day consecration period. It is during this time, specifically on the equinox, which is 320 on the Gregorian calendar, that Yahweh's glory enters his house. The sun rises exactly 90 degrees in the east, casting a straight line shadow. It sets 270 degrees to the west. There's no distortion, there's no blending, just pure heavenly light. And the temple is filled with it. The house is sanctified. In verse 8 of the same chapter, Yahweh says, in their setting of their threshold by my thresholds, and their posts by my posts. Here, Yahweh makes a distinction, their posts versus his posts. On 316, the equilux, when day and night appear equal as viewed from the ground by the priests. This is due to atmospheric lensing and light refraction. That is man's post. But Enoch, when taken above the earth, he saw something different. There was no lensing, there was no refraction, there was no blending, just pure division. The true straight line day, the equinox, is what Yahweh sees. That is his post. And we know in Jubilees that it says we're to observe the Sabbath along with the angels in heavens. And that's the great sign that Yahweh gave to us, that straight line shadow day. So within the 7-day frame between the last Sabbath of the year and the first Sabbath of the new year, 316 and 320 stand as the two posts. The doorposts of this holy entrance, one from the view of man and one from the view of heaven. This 7-day window is not ordinary. It is a consecration period, a set apart time, a pause between the closing of the old year and the opening of the new one, between the 52nd Sabbath and the first Sabbath. Ezekiel 43 says, 7 days shall they purge the altar and purify it, and they shall consecrate themselves. And when these days are expired, it shall be that upon the 8th day, and so forward, the priest shall make your burnt offerings upon the altar, and your peace offerings, and I will accept you, saith Yahweh. This mirrors the command given in the Torah. In Exodus 29, we read, and thus shalt thou do unto Aaron and to his sons according to all things which I have commanded thee. 7 days shalt thou consecrate them. And just as in Exodus, this week is not just for rest. It's a purification period, a reset, a moment of sanctification and preparation. On the 8th day, the first Sabbath of the new year, Yahweh says, I will accept you. We also read in Exodus 29, and there I will meet with the children of Yasharel, and the tabernacle shall be sanctified by my glory. And I will sanctify the tabernacle, the congregation, and the altar. I will sanctify also both Aaron and his sons, and I will dwell among the children of Yasharel, and will be their Elohim. This promise, this meeting with Yahweh, happens during the 7-day consecration period. The equinox, 320, falls within the sacred week, and it marks the moment his glory shines into the temple, entering through the eastern gate. But this doesn't mark the end of the process. the entire 7-day period must be completed, just as commanded in Torah. Only after the 7th day, on the 8th day, the first Sabbath of the new year, are the priests allowed to make the burnt offerings and peace offerings again. Yahuwah also says in Ezekiel 43, "Thou son of man, show the house to the house of Yasharel. Let them measure the pattern and all the ordinances thereof." The pattern is Yahuwah's calendar. The house is his heavenly tabernacle. And the sun and stars move in and out according to his ordinances. We're called to measure this pattern, not by man's calculations, not by traditions, but by the way Yahuwah has aligned the heavens. Number 3 says, "But those that encamp before the tabernacle toward the east shall be Moses and Aaron and his sons, keeping the charge of the sanctuary." The priests stand at the east gate, watching. They are stationed to keep the charge, to observe the light, and to be ready for the glory of Yahweh to enter. They watch during this week, waiting as the house is filled, the altar is cleansed, and the new cycle has begun. So again, 316 is the divider day, and 320 is the equinox. They are posts within a 7-day sacred period. This period begins after the 52nd Sabbath and ends with the first Sabbath of the new year. These are the days of consecration for the altar, the priest, and the house. The equinox is the day when Yahweh's glory enters, but it is not the end of the process. The full 7 days must be completed before the first offerings are accepted. It is a pattern woven into scripture and mirrored in the heavens, a time of preparation, sanctification, and alignment with Yahweh's perfect order. All right, we can move to the next picture, Jeremy. Thank you, brother. All right, so I created this visual of the two wheels that we're talking about here, and Jeremy explained very well the weekly cycle and the solar cycle and how they overlap and coincide together. Yahweh's calendar is built on multiple overlapping cycles, like synchronized wheels. Jeremy's done a great job explaining the outermost wheel, the weekly cycle. This begins with Genesis 1 through 2, which takes place before the 6 days of creation, followed by the Sabbath. According to the cycle, there are 52 Sabbaths in a year, followed by a yearly divider day. This divider aligns Genesis 1 through 2, and Jubilees 124, setting the stage for the creation week without disrupting the 7-day pattern. This yearly divider day is also known as day 0 in the weekly cycle. It is not counted as part of any week, month, or day count. It stands alone at the end of the year, after the 52nd Sabbath, to reset the cycle and keep the weekly rhythm intact year after year. The solar cycle is a separate but connected wheel. It begins on the 4th day of creation week, when the luminaries were created. Genesis 1:14 through 19. This is where Enoch 72 verse 5 comes in, which describes the Tekufa, the equinox day that begins the solar year. This Tekufa is also referred to as day 0, but unlike the weekly divider, it is counted in the solar cycle. It serves as the starting point for the 364-day solar year. According to the Dead Sea Scrolls, the monthly count begins from this Tekufa day, anchoring the months to the turning of the seasons. This is why it's essential that the weekly divider day comes after the 52nd Sabbath, so that Genesis 1 through 2 can serve as the placement for that divider, and the creation week begins cleanly with day 1. This preserves the structure where the sun is created on day 4, the middle of the week, just as it should be. It also ensures the seasons remain fixed in their positions and do not drift. These cycles, when understood together, reveal a beautiful and precise design that keeps time, creation, and the appointed times perfectly aligned. So in this image, Jeremy, if you zoom in on the arrows corresponding to each date, we'll notice that the circle of the weekly creation cycle is divided into sections, each representing a week. There are 52 sections in total, symbolizing the 52 weeks of the year. The 52nd week ends, and the divider is marked on 3/16. Following that, the first week of the new yearly cycle begins, and we can see that the equinox falls on the fourth day within the first week, which marks the beginning of the monthly count. The monthly cycle is outlined by the Mazzaroth here. You'll see that as the most inner circle, with each month represented as a 30-degree segment of the full 360-degree circle. Now, Jeremy, if we look at the bottom right corner, we'll see a picture of the menorah there. Okay, awesome. The menorah offers a powerful visual representation of this design. Its 7 branches symbolize the 7 days of creation week, a complete weekly cycle. But the spaces between the branches, 6 in total, reflect something deeper. The portals described in the Book of Enoch. And I know that looks a little small, but in those spaces, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 6 gates mark the rising and setting positions of the sun throughout the months of the year. The straight central line of the menorah, which separates the 3rd and 4th gates, corresponds to the Tekufa or equinox. This is the solar day 0, the perfect balance between light and darkness when day and night are of equal length, just as Enoch would have observed from above the earth, where he saw the true divisions of light and darkness without the distortion of atmospheric lensing or light refraction. So while the top of the menorah displays the flow of creation week and the weekly cycle, the spaces between the branches quietly hold the solar structure, where Yah's precision in the heavens is revealed through the gates, the Tekufa, and the turning of the seasons. The menorah then is not just a symbol of light, it is a picture of time and order, bearing witness to how Yahweh aligned his beauty, to how Yahweh aligned his creation with exactness and beauty. Okay, so my third portion here, before we begin this, it's important to understand something about how we track the stars. There's a popular theory known as the precession of the equinox, which suggests that the position of the constellations shift slowly over thousands of years. However, there is no way to prove this theory through direct observation alone. The only way to quote unquote prove this theory is through man-made simulations and digital programs like Stellarium. So it's important to understand that the theory of the precession of the equinox does not change the sun's yearly path. The sun is the primary light and the main timekeeper in Yah's calendar, establishing the great sign mentioned in the Book of Jubilees. The moon and stars simply act as supporting witnesses. Wisdom of Solomon 7 says, "It is he who gave me true knowledge of the forces of nature, what the world is made of, how the elements behave, how the calendar is determined by the movements of the sun, the changing seasons, the constellations, and the cycles of years." But in reality, we can only know for sure what we can witness with our own eyes right now, in the present. The heavens were created as signs to mark appointed times and seasons, And the most reliable way to read them is by simply going outside and watching, just as people have done for thousands of years. And when we do that, when we look up and observe with our own eyes, we begin to notice something amazing. There is order, timing, and meaning written in the stars. So, all right, so let's walk through what it actually means when we say the sun enters a constellation and how the heavens bear witness to the times we're in. The sky is a giant wheel made up of stars, divided into 12 equal sections, each one representing a constellation, also known as the Mazzaroth or a zodiac sign. Each of these sections is 30 degrees wide. So there's 12 in a circle. At the beginning of a solar month, the sun is positioned right at the start of one of these 30-degree sections. Jeremy, we can pan to picture 2 there. So the sun's positioned at the start of one of these 30-degree sections. That's what we mean when we say the sun has entered a new constellation. So, for example, on the spring equinox, about an hour after sunset, which is when we'll actually be able to view the stars, the constellation Aries, or the Ram, appears low in the west. The stars in the western sky give us an indicator for the current solar month that we are in. So the picture on the screen is showing where Aries is in the western sky on March 20th, an hour after sunset. We'll see Aries there to verify the month that we are in. All right, next picture. As an additional detail, at the same time, if you look to the east, right at sunset, you'll see that Leo is just beginning to rise. This is especially significant because Leo is symbolic of the tribe of Judah. Just as Judah leads the 12 tribes of Yasharel, Leo leads the night sky at the beginning of the year, rising first in the east as the sun sets, bearing witness to a new season and a new cycle. All right, picture 4. As the days go by, the wheel of stars slowly turns. 1 month later, at the start of the next solar month, Taurus appears in the west an hour after sunset, letting us know the sun has moved into that part of the sky. So if you're familiar with the Zadok calendar, you can look at the dates here. So we have April 19th up there as the beginning of the second month on the Zadok calendar, and we're seeing Taurus now in the sky. And every month, the constellation will shift. It'll be something else. All right, so picture 5. Another key sign that we notice during the first month, and we're back on, oh, okay. Yeah, during the first month, the bright star Spica, known in ancient times as the barley star, is not yet visible above the horizon an hour after sunset. But by the time of Passover, which falls on April 2nd on the Gregorian calendar, the constellation Virgo, or the Virgin, holds the bright star Spica and rises above the eastern horizon about an hour after sunset. So we're seeing it right in that, the bottom right, you can see that bright star there above the horizon. Its appearance at this specific time acts as a witness in the heavenly scroll, signaling that the barley is aviv, or ripe. This celestial sign witnesses to the timing of the spring harvest, aligning the agricultural cycle on earth with the messages written in the heavens. All right, next picture, and the last one that we have. So even the moon plays a role in this heavenly testimony. Throughout the year, when the moon is full, it acts as a witness by standing opposite the sun in the sky. This means the constellation behind the full moon is always opposite from the one the sun is currently in. For example, if the sun is in Aries, the full moon will appear in Libra. This gives us yet another visual clue to help confirm the current solar month based on the stars. And while this segment may seem small about the moon, this is how the moon is used as a witness, along with the agricultural cycles that were very important to the people back then and the farmers. The time to plant things and the time to water things and the time to harvest the plants. So the moon has a really important role, but it's not a determiner in Yah's calendar. It's witnessing to what the sun is actually doing. All right, so by watching the skies, what's rising and what's setting, we can read the rhythms of time, the tribes, the turning of the seasons, and even the timing of the harvest. It's all written in the great wheel of stars above us, what many of us call the heavenly scroll. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sister Marissa. So let me get the rest up here and I will continue. So what we read before was Jubilees is describing the yearly weekly count, the 52 weeks of 7 days, which is going to be 364 days. So Jubilees 4:17 through 19, and Enoch, was the first among men that are born on earth who learned writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down the signs of the Shamayim according to the order of their months, in a book that men might know the seasons of the years according to the order of their separate months. And he was the first to write a witness and witness to the sons of men among the generations of the earth, and recounted the weeks of the Jubilees, and made known to them the days of the years, and put in the order of the months, and recounted the Sabbaths of the years. This is showing the yearly Sabbath is divided. So as we made known to him, and what was and what shall be, he saw in a vision of his sleep, as it shall happen to the children of men throughout their generations, until the day of judgment. He saw and understood all, and wrote his witnesses, and placed the witness on the earth for all children of men, and for their generations. So Enoch is going to describe to us the yearly monthly count of 364 days, which is 12 months of 30 days, plus the 4 intercalated seasonal days, which also equals 364 days. So that's what Sister Marissa was just presenting to us. So this is the cycle of the sun and the stars to track the monthly and seasonal count, as Jubilee states above. We see two different 364-day counts, which gives us the wheel within a wheel, and the yearly overlap cycle of the weekly count and the monthly count of 364 days. Each start on a different day of creation week. Our yearly divider day is before day 1 of creation week, as Genesis 1 through 2, Jubilees 1, and 4Q394 have shown us. And again, we went over these in part 1. So as this is our yearly 364-day count. So starting day 1, week of creation, that's going to be when we begin our yearly 364-day count. The monthly divider day, which is going to be the monthly 364-day count. So this monthly divider day is going to happen on the straight line shadow day, or the spring equinox, which is the Tekufa. 2 cycles of the year, the 2 wheels, 2 divider days, 1 for each cycle to keep them lined up perfectly each year. This is why there are some who claim the day after the equinox is when we should start our count. But we should be following the Creator Yahuwah and start our counting of days when He did, on day 1 of creation week, not following the creation and starting our count midweek. Both counts work together to keep the yearly cycle hitting the heavenly markers every year, year after year. So for a visual of what we're describing, so I have the Gregorian dates here in the top row. So this middle row is going to be the creation week count each year. So on March 15th, this is going to be day 364, which is the last Sabbath of the year on the 7th day. March 16th is going to be our yearly divider day. March 17th, which they happen to mark as St. Patty's Day, interesting enough, is day 1 of 364 and day 1 of the week. And then 318, day 2 of the 364 count and the week. 319, and then 320 is day 4 of both the week and the 364 day count. This is when the Takufa happens, marking day 4 and the head of the months. Then 3 days later, 3 branches later, like on the menorah, we have our Sabbath day. So if you notice, I marked the Shabbat days are darker blue, the divider days are the lighter blue. So this is going to make a pattern as well in our week. And then this monthly count, so the monthly yearly cycle count is going to be this last row. And this is how we're going to get our 360-day prophetic year that Enoch also speaks about. So this is going to be on the 28th of the 12th month, which again, it's March 15th. Then we have the divider day, but it's not counted in the months. So this is going to be day 361. Then we have day 362, the 29th of month 12, 317. Day 363, the 30th of month 12. Then we have the seasonal intercalated day, which is day 364. And then right here, the Takufa, the equinox, day 1 of month 1 is going to mark day 0 of the 364-day count, which will repeat. And this is going to line up the weekly and the monthly yearly counts perfectly, like bricks on a wall. So if you stack bricks on a wall and you stagger them like this, it's going to bring strength and stability. And not only that, but it's showing us these 2 witnesses that are bringing in Yahuwah's yearly cycle. So Babylon has us thinking, just one, there's only one count. That's where they fooled us all. So the weekly count, because that's Yahuwah's creation, that is very important. And many seem to discredit it to fit other methods. So if we see this is going to be the staggering we're talking about, this top row will represent the 12 months of 30 days, plus the 4 seasonal divider days, which is going to be 364 days. The same with here, but this is the yearly weekly count, the 52 weeks of 7 days. So they're the same exact length when you put them just next to each other, but they have this overlap to bring stability and the witnesses to Yahuwah's calendar. So Jubilees 25:16, and he may make may he make your sons many during your life, and may they arise according to the number of the months of the year, and may their sons become many and great beyond the stars of the Shamayim, and their numbers be more than the sand of the sea. And Enoch 72:5-6, the chariot on which he ascends, so speaking about the sun, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the Shamayim and returns through the north in order to reach the east. And it's so guided that he comes to that portal and shines in the face of the heavens. So in this way, he rises in the first month in the great portal, which is the fourth. So here in verse 5 of Enoch 72, we can see it's showing the sun and it's entering into the portal of heaven and it shines in heaven. Then in that same way, he's going and rising in the great portal, the fourth. So we see two portals. One is in heaven, which is marking the yearly cycle divider. And then the other is the great fourth portal, starting the monthly count. And Enoch 72:32, on that day, the night decreases and amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the night is equal to the day, and the year is exactly to its days, 364. Here in Enoch 72, we can see he's defining the equinox, which happens before the Tekufa. The Tekufa is the heavenly marker for not only day 4 of creation week, but the divider day of the monthly cycle each year, as mentioned before. Enoch is describing the cycle of the sun, the moon, and the stars each year, and thus showing us that specific wheel of the yearly cycle. This is why many will be confused and will have their divider day on the equinox following the creation, like the priests who had their backs turned on the temple to look at the rising sun and not our creator Yahuwah. So again, we're seeing two cycles, the two wheels, which is the weekly 364-day count and the monthly 364-day count. And both of these work together to keep each year lined up perfectly with what Yahuwah tells us with his heavenly markers. Enoch's describing the yearly cycle of the sun, moon, and stars, while Jubilees is describing the yearly count of days, starting on day 1, week of creation, when the light came to be, 52 weeks of 7 days exactly. The sons of Zadok clearly saw these two wheels and used them together to determine Yahuwah's true calendar, the two witnesses. So here's that. The picture we had shown there on Marissa's presentation, but this is showing the two pillars and Yakin and Boaz. So Yakin means he shall establish. So he established creation before the counting of days. Boaz in its strength, the glory of Yahuwah in his strength, which is lighting up the Holy of Holy in the center of the tabernacle, marking the spring Tekufa. These two pillars are keeping days 1, 2, and 3 of creation right in line where they should be. And so the calendar accommodates the 365.24 days of the solar cycle, and the 4 seasons are spring, summer, fall, and winter. When the 364-day count has been accomplished, as instructed by Enoch, Jubilees, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, he will arrive with an extra day for the physical year every year and another day on the 4th year. This cycle repeats continually. The divider days are not counted as part of the 7-day week or numbered. They're simply lived. This is why we live in a 365.24-day world, but count 364 days to do as Enoch, Jubilees, and the Dead Sea Scroll has commanded for the calendar. Excuse me. The calendar accounts for the full year of 365.24 days with the divider day. The first day of creation week starts the count of 364 days after the last Sabbath of the year, thus keeping the calendar on season every year, and the weeks and the months perfectly overlapping each other each year. Day 1 of month 1 will always be on the 4th day of the 7-day creation week, marked by the spring Tekufa. This is not the Wednesday of the Roman or Jewish calendar. This is the true sequence of the 4th day, and it recognizes the creation of the sun as read in Genesis, and the 4th day of creation, and is marked by its sign, the Tekufa. The biblical day starts at sunrise, recognizing the creation of light, not the beginning of the darkness. It's not possible for the Saturday of today to be the 7th day Sabbath continually, week by week, and year by year. because Yahuwah's counting starts from day 1 week of creation, not any Gregorian weekday. The Tekufa will always mark day 4. This is important to note. The weekly 7th day is the day that was made holy, not the Saturday marked on the Roman or Jewish calendars. The 7th-day Sabbath is on a fixed day of the week on the true Zadok 364-day counted calendar. It is exactly 52 weeks, not 52 weeks and 2 days, as with the Julian or Gregorian calendars, and it's never 53 weeks of 7 days, which we actually do not find anywhere. And we read in Jubilees, it is always 52 weeks of 7 days. So one needs to remember that on March 20th every year is the spring Tekufa. So Sister Erin Ryan and Brother Alan Pisarak have both been tracking the Tekufa nearly a decade, and it's always on March 20th, according to these 2 witnesses and many in our own Telegram group. That day is the 4th day of a new yearly 7-day week. This day celebrates the creation's 4th day, on which Yahuwah Elohim made the luminaries. The extra day after the last Sabbath is not counted after the 364 days is complete for the full year. So for a visual, this is going to be what we read in Genesis. So creation week is going to be our standard to start each year, and the counting is starting at 0. So just like Genesis 1 through 2, the light starts the counting of the days all the way until day 7. So the priestly cycles and where they come from, yes, we see them in Chronicles, but it is rabbinical writings that will pair up moon cycles to their priestly cycles, and many attempt to apply the same method to the priestly cycles found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and this will not work. So as quoted from the rabbinic writings, which is the Mishnah, the Tosefta, and the Berytot, in connection with the connotations of the Mishmarot. So this is their Talmudic. So again, this is a quote from, I didn't put the author in here, but it's one of the rabbis. So he's talking about the Mishmarot, the Mamadot, and the Mishnah in here. So the establishment of 24 priestly courses and the order of their service as described in 1 Chronicles 24 was meant to be a permanent arrangement. When this order was established and at what time the list was made is not known. In any event, it was a late development and at least 1 or 2 generations after the time of High Priest Joachim, to which the list of the priestly clans in Nehemiah 12 is attributed to. So various scholars can have dated this list at the beginning of the Hasmonean, the usurpers era, since Jehoram, the representative of the Hasmonean clan, who also observed the Babylonian calendar, heads the list in 1 Chronicles 24, whereas in Nehemiah, his name is 16th on the list. The moon phases in Dead Sea Scrolls are author's insertions. When we look at a comparison of the complete Dead Sea Scrolls and other translations, we will see many of the moon phases in the complete Dead Sea Scrolls are author's insertions and do not exist in the original text. So this is from Giza Ramiz, the complete Dead Sea Scrolls. This is his Mishmarot A, or 4Q320, fragment 1. So we read, to show it from the east, and to cause it to shine in the middle of heaven, in the foundation of the creation, from evening until morning, there is a full moon. On the 4th day, in the week of the sons of Gamul, in the 1st month of the 1st year. So as you can see, the parentheses are author's insertions by Giza Vermes, just as we also see in many Bible translations, meaning they are insertions from the author's interpretation of what a particular verse can mean. If we use Florentino Garcia Martinez, the Dead Sea Scroll translated, we will read, to display itself from the east and shine in the center of the sky, at the base of the vault, from evening to morning, on the 4th day of the week, the sons of Gumul, in the 1st month of the 1st year. So if you remember part one, we went over this and it was Jubilees 14:12 or 12:14 that is showing it was Abraham that was observing from evening to morning the stars on the head of the seventh month. Just to recap that a bit. So this is the evidence that the author's false insertions of the moon phases in the Mishmarot are incorrect in bringing in the years. How can the moon bring in a 364-day year when it only has 354 days? The calendar is determined by the movements of the sun and stars, as we can see with Enoch 74:12 and Wisdom of Solomon 7:17 through 19, and all of the other verses we had read as well. So we're getting into Dukkha. We're almost finished here. So beyond the problem of intercalation, another basic area of ignorance hindering the complete understanding of the calendars involves the meaning of the recurrent Hebrew term Dukkha. Some say Duke. So this word describing one of the phases of the moon, which is an author's opinion, Michael Wise's, occurs frequently in the synchronistic calendars, text 72 or 4Q321. The system of the lunar observation associated with the term, again, this is the author's opinion, clearly underlies clearly underlies other texts as well, even though they don't mention Dukkha. So what they're admitting here is Dukkha doesn't exist in 4Q320, but they're saying, well, it underlies it, so we'll just, toss it in there. So before the discovery of the scrolls, scholars have never encountered this word. And reasoning from etymology, Dukkha most likely means carefully examined. But what is being examined? The scholars are still debating the options for Duke and have a reasonable case can be made for either approach. The authors of this book do not themselves agree on what it means, but have decided to translate according to the full moon option. Hence, we will take Dukkha to refer to observation of the first crescent, and that's from Michael Weiss's commentary and the Dead Sea Scrolls translated. So as you can see, the authors took it upon themselves to declare the meaning as different phases of the moon when scholars claim they don't agree or know the meaning. Dukkha does not even exist in 4Q320, and it's only in 4Q321. So not a single calendar fragment in the Dead Sea Scrolls mentions the Hebrew word Yarach. The translators have added the words new moon and full moon in place of the Hebrew word Duke or Dukkha, which technically means carefully examined, according to the scholars. But we see they also claim that Duke or Dukkha was an unknown word, but in fact, this statement is untrue. So we have Strong's Concordance, H1751, Duke, to pound, crush, pulverize, to crumble. So again, H1751, Duke. So this verb is used in context of describing the action of a crumbling or breaking into small pieces. In Daniel 2:35, the word is used to describe the crumbling of the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, which is ground to powder by the wind. The sun gives us the oath or the sign for the days, the weeks, the months, years, Sabbaths, Jubilees, as written in Jubilees 2:9. We can also see there is a sign for when the weekly Sabbath day will begin, which is Jubilees 2, verse 21, as we mentioned above, or yesterday. So the calendar determines the priestly cycle, not the other way around. There are other years that will match up to the same cycle that others present as well, who claim it is moon phases in the Mishmarot. For example, on 3/19/1924, the moon was at 98% full. 3/20/1935, the moon was at 100%. 3/21/1962, the moon again was at 100%. Many others state that this cycle repeats itself every 294 years. This was found to be incorrect after careful examination. The moon cycles have a pattern of 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, 5, 6. So you see there is a reset cycle that makes it not land in the same order perpetually. So to say that every year 1 and every year 4 are the same, every year 2 and 5 are the same, every year 3 and 6 are the same is not being truthful. The reason is the solar cycle is 365.24, not 364. And the moon doesn't fall behind 10 days every year, but rather it's 11.24 days. And we research the moon from every angle to see if it shows us when to intercalate, or if it's for sabbatical and jubilee years. So using the menorah on a Gregorian weekday is not right, as this method doesn't use the luminaries as a foundation at all, but rather a man-made week. How would the sons of Zadok have known to intercalate to a Wednesday when the Gregorian calendar didn't exist at that time? And this is actually going to be part of Ellie's presentation. She's going to prove that Saturday was actually day 1 of the week until 321 AD when Constantine came into play. So, but that is going to be probably for tomorrow for Ellie's presentation. So, and intercalation is something we should be observing from Yahuwah, that is the oath or sign, not a man-made week. If you intercalate a week every 6 years, your years will begin drifting backwards from the Tekufa, and in 100 years, your calendar will begin in the winter. Many have chosen this method, in my opinion, because it's the only way that makes the most sense, based off the moon phases of the priestly cycles, if you're using a Gregorian week as a foundation. We have tracked the priestly cycles for the claimed 294 years, and they don't miss a beat, meaning there is no evidence of a week intercalation, and to suggest all the priests serve in this extra week is speculation at best. The pattern is always 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, 5, 6, and there is no room or evidence of a 5th year intercalation in their method, which would be needed to keep everything in sync. As far as the stars are concerned, what exactly is noticed in the stars' alignment that indicated whether or not to intercalate? So we use the star app, which is not Stellarium, which is what Sister Marissa presented at the beginning, to try and understand this without just taking someone's word for it. And it appears many use astronomical time to determine the year start, in combination with the Gregorian weekdays, which both are man-made. After numerous hours spent recording the lunar cycles, we have found they cannot be replicated infinitely to determine the years. And many people believe that the lunar cycle, or the full moon phase, and the solar cycle, the equinox day, Tekufa, will sync up with the Gregorian weekday Wednesday to replicate creation week every 294 years. However, the moon is not reliable in this scenario. So on 3/20/2019, the moon was illuminated at 100%. 294 years prior, 3/20/17/26, it was 92%. 294 years prior, 1433, the moon was illuminated at 77%. Not to mention, this 294 years is found nowhere in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So as we can see, it's not a 294-year cycle because it's not 100% each time. It's actually going down quite a bit of percentages each time. So Jubilee 6, 36 through 37, for there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon and how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day a day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day. And they will confound all the days, the holy, which can be Yahuwah's true Zadok calendar, with the unclean, or the Gregorian calendar week, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go wrong as to months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. If the sons of Zadok had jubilees as their foundation, and it warns us about making observations of the moon. Why do some insist that they were observing moon phases? The true Sabbath is anchored to Yahuwah's great sign that we can physically observe shining here on earth as it is in heaven, the Tekufa. And yeah, Brother Jackson shared the picture there at the beginning, and that's a perfect description of this right here. That the sun is his great sign that shines here on earth. So we're still determining how the moon is used exactly, but as Marissa had showed us, we're getting pretty close. And how it is a witness. But we have been finding it is more for agricultural seasons and tracking longer periods of time. We also believe it's not a certain phase or sliver of the moon that we cite, but rather which gate the full moon is rising and setting opposite of the sun as a witness, not a determining factor. We are also seeing it as a witness for the 3-year tithe, which can be found in Deuteronomy 14:28. So we do know for sure it's not used for months or to calculate a year or used to determine Sabbaths or festivals. As we have seen, using the moon phases to determine the priestly cycles stems from the rabbinic text. And when attempting to line up these phases, they do not line up as they are made to appear as they do by the author's insertions. So we don't have all the answers, but we are searching diligently and continuously.
Excellent. And I have to break in at this point. Thank you for all that elucidation. My mind is just spinning. I know, along with a lot of others. I've got to ask now, are there questions or comments? Be civil.
All right. Oh, so I see 73 chats here that I need to catch up on.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if I'm going to catch up with all of those.
Well, I thank you, Marissa and Jeremy, for your presentations. And thank you, Jackson, for hosting us and for the ministry you've been doing. I actually met you, I don't know, maybe a year ago over over some communication. You have my email address. Maybe I should put it in again so it would remind you.
Please
But
do.
I have appreciated your kindness and your
Thank you, Ellie.
I have a question.
Mm.
Richard,
Yeah, go for it.
Robert, go ahead, man.
So, how many years have you guys been testing this particular calendar and citing the sun signs?
So if you're trying to make the point that, the longer you do this, the more knowledge you have, my 11-year-old son here has a complete understanding of this calendar. So we ourselves in this group personally have been doing it the last 6 months, but there are sisters and brothers in our group who have been doing it for 3 to 5 years. We also have Sister Erin Ryan, like I said, who's been doing this nearly a decade herself. And she, like you, I'm sure you know who she is, Robert. She's been tracking the Tekufas as well, and they always land on March 20th, the Gregorian date.
Well,
So,
I tracked it this year on the 19th, and
yeah,
several other people did too.
yes, so because you need to track it from early morning to sunset. And also we are seeing, like in Enoch 72:5, we see there the sun is setting in the west. So here in the US, we are west of Israel. So while the sun is setting in Israel, it's our daytime here over in the western US. So we are seeing that sun line up to then rise again on March 20th there in Israel. Because like I said, we have many witnesses, and in our own group as well. We tracked it on March 20th. So we know there is varying datas on these dates, and I believe that is why we see the variance here in the US, is because we are seeing the sun setting in the west to come to the north, then rise again in the east. So Jerusalem or Israel is going to be the chosen land by Yahuwah himself. And that's the very land New Jerusalem will come sit on. That is also where we find Qumran and the Dead Sea Scrolls as well. So if they were tracking it from that position, I think it's a pretty important position to track it from.
So are
But
you guys tracking it from Israel?
no, so we do have people that live over there though, and here in the U.S. we can be on the same longitude and latitudinal lines as Israel, or that same boundary line as Israel, where you can track it at. So, like I said, there's variances in the date. We ourselves, along with the two other witnesses, Alan Pizrak and Sister Erin Ryan, have all tracked it on the 20th. It's okay if you disagree and you tracked it on the 19th. There's a reason why. And Enoch 72 verse 5, the sun setting in the west to rise again to the east.
Okay, I've followed Alan Pisarek for a while and his stuff, and
Yeah,
he always taught that the equinox does move. So he's changed his opinion.
he taught that it moves on the Gregorian weekday. So in case you haven't, I actually saw you comment on one of his posts where he's actually seeing this method here and talking about it. So my question would be, if you think the sons of Zadok were intercalating to a Wednesday, how would you track a Wednesday through the sun and stars without a Gregorian calendar, which did not exist until 321 AD?
Well, I'm not presenting today, but I can answer that question. It's really simple. You just never break the cycle of seven.
And so we see, as through the scriptures I presented, that's untrue, as Jubilees has described. The yearly Sabbath day, the yearly weekly count, is divided. So why do we experience 365 days between Tekufa and Tekufa? Because we have to start the counting at 0. So 0 numerically is a number. Without 0, we cannot go past 9. So we see there Genesis 1, 1 through 2, the time before the counting of days. So the light marked the counting of days. So what was before the counting of days? Nothing. So we start at nothing, 0, as we would call it today. So we start at 0, and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 364. Then it comes back again to 0. So this is going to mark day 4, the Tekufa, marking day 4 always of creation week, which is day 1, week of creation. And if you think there's just a constant run on of 7 days in a week, and you only do a 364-day cycle, your first fruits of the wheat and the barley is going to happen in the wintertime, and you cannot have that. So unless you intercalate a week, which is scripturally not found, as we went over in Jubilees, showing the count is never to change from 52 weeks of 7 days. We never once see 7 days added to this count. We see several times it's a 364-day only count because we need to start from 0.
Well, I've
And
seen what you presented, and every year you have an intercalary day. So if you add
yeah,
7 years, you have a 7 day weekly intercalation.
so our method will hit the spring Tekufas exactly. It will hit the markers in the heavens exactly. Your method sticks to a man-made construct of the Gregorian week, Wednesday, which did not exist until 321 AD. And this is what Ellie's presentation is going to prove. Saturday was day 1 of the week back then during Messiah's time. And also the Roman calendar at the time was can basically be compared to the floating lunar Sabbath calendar some use today as well. So I think Ellie's presentation is actually really imperative to this, to show, you know, the people who want to try to stick to the man-made Wednesday, it's not going to work. You're never going to line up to the heavens. This is why you must intercalate a week, which is found nowhere in scriptures. We
Okay,
have
so
walked this through nothing but scriptures.
well, you gave a commentary on what the scriptures mean to you, but
So
Enoch, can we go back to yesterday? I don't think the first Enoch 74:5 verse was addressed. So when did this sign happen this year in 2025?
what do you mean? The,
Yesterday, I
are you
mentioned,
talking about the full moon? So the moon is, so like we showed in several verses, can you show where the moon is going to determine the years? We actually see in Enoch, he's saying the moon has its own course. So what Enoch is describing is the first year. He's not describing every single year. So the full moon every single year is not going to line up with this.
say that again. Enoch is describing the first year.
Correct.
What first year?
The year of creation. This is what Yahuwah showed him. He was taken to Yahuwah's position. He was shown the counting of the years. He describes the first year, and then he continues on showing how the moon is going to be off and it's not going to come in and bring in a year. As we see all throughout Job, Jubilees, Enoch, it's the sun and the stars that are bringing in a year.
Okay, so first Enoch 74:5 only
Correct.
pertains to year one, basically 6,000 years ago. And
However many thousands of years ago, this cycle will repeat, but it's not every single year because the moon only has 354 days. We see the calendar counts 364. So how is that going to be a full moon if it's only got 354 days? How does
that's something,
354 days bring in a 364-day count?
Okay,
well, you guys,
we're all lost now. Let's go on to something else. The
Okay,
question comes in, does anybody else have a comment or a question?
I
I've got a,
definitely do. Oh,
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
o- okay. Thanks. I had a friend on here earlier, but he jumped off when you got to those pillars about, in the graphics earlier. All of us have seen those used in the Masonic temples. Um, and I used to think, wait a minute, that's, Freemasonic, and what are they doing in these graphics? And okay, so can you explain about that? Um,
So, so what's,
why the Joaquin and the other
yeah.
pillar, those two pillars. We've seen them in the Freemason temples, and people, believe, and I did too. It's like, wait a minute, those are Freemasonic. What are they doing in our graphics here about Yah's sacred calendar? So can you please help out with that?
So yes, those two pillars are actually the two pillars in front of the temple. I believe it's in, I'd have to look it up exactly. I think it's in Kings or Chronicles, but it talks about the two pillars, which are Yachin and Boaz. So what the Freemasons did is they took these pillars and they twisted it and used it for evil because they actually uplift Solomon as, I'm sure you know about all this. I don't want to go too deep into it or have,
Yeah.
Brother Jackson's video flagged. So, but it's not
Yeah.
a Masonic sign. It is actually the temple of Yahuwah. That's what it is used for. And
Well, oh, go ahead.
so as we can see, they're used for a significant purpose, and they were named because he established creation, and then in his glory, that's when the Tekufa is shining. So basically, Freemasonics or Freemasonry, they took that and they twisted it and used it for evil. Because we know
Um,
Satan can only imitate; he can never create. That's
I
why he. That's why he
okay.
took. Oh, sorry.
Oh, keep going.
So basically that's why he took the stars, and this is why in modern times we have, quote unquote horoscopes, things like that. So he took what's in the stars, twisted it, and is using it for evil. So I'm sure we all know here, these horoscopes and stuff, we should avoid them. We should not look into them. But that doesn't mean that his Mazzaroth isn't telling us signs that we should be looking at, because we do see in scriptures all the patriarchs, prophets, they were all, looking at the stars in the heavens. And I believe this is the heavenly scrolls. It's what's written in the stars. And thank you
Okay.
for your question.
Well, you know, I have said that Satan does counterfeit what is of Yah's. He seems to believe that they were created by Cain's line long before the temple. Is that true?
I've never heard of that. So I
Okay.
just took what was in the Bible and made that picture.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with Freemasonry. There was no checkered boards or ladders, nothing like that. That's just the two pillars of the temple as described per scriptures. But, if you have information on that, feel free to send it to me, sister.
We're also dealing with myths and legends as well as truth. We have to consider that. Many,
Yeah.
many mistranslations. Personally, dogmatically useful translations to certain sects. You've got the Masoretes as well. And the Qumran scrolls, we can't just consider them to be perfect because they popped out of the ground. I mean, those things have to be weighed as well. And that's one of the reasons I said at the beginning, we don't know anything because there is so much more to know and so much we simply can't. That's why we need to get along, make concessions for each other, and find love one of the way or the other. I'm done. I have no
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. I
Shalom,
agree.
shalom.
Thank you.
How's
Hey,
Jeremy doing?
shalom. Oh, shalom. Hey.
Hey, my comment was actually kind of geared towards some of what Marissa had shared about the precession of the equinox. So there actually is a precession of the equinox, and I think it plays back into some of what you and Robert were discussing, because the equinox precesses around the Earth in four different positions throughout the year, so that's what creates that extra time that we see in the 365 and a quarter day. But also the equinox itself is 1.25 days long. It lasts for 1.25 days. It's a 30-hour event from the time the northern edge of the sun touches the celestial equator until the southern edge of the sun leaves the celestial equator. That's what my presentation was about, the sun actually being in the fourth gate according to equinox. And I think that's the only place that we differ. I also wanted to quickly comment while we're here on the moon. The Chinese mansions actually reveal that there are 28 specific stations of the moon throughout a lunar station month. So it has 28 specific stations that it repeats 28, 28, 28 over and over throughout the year. So that's the way that it brings in the year in 364 days, because 13 times 28 is 364. So those were two things I wanted to say real quick. And then I wanted to ask Jeremy, what do you do with the 364 stations of the sun? And or have you already dealt with that in the previous video? And do you understand what they are?
So you meaning the days, the 364 days? Is that what you're meaning?
Well, Enoch specifically mentions 300 by their 364 stations.
Yeah, yeah,
Here,
yeah.
thusly.
Yeah, so basically he's describing the days. So the 364 days. So that's we do have a video explaining all of our presentation. It's a
Jeremy, I
bit.
can answer that.
Oh, go ahead, sister. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're seeing Enoch 72:5 when the sun um, traverses the north and shines in the face of the heavens as day zero. And that's when it's between gates 3 and 4 and what creates the straight line shadow. And in that way, it returns back to that great portal, which is the fourth, and is on the next day. So that count of that 30, 30, 31 times 4, is the 364. And then it begins again at 0, Enoch 72:5. That's how we're seeing that.
Okay, I
Thank
don't know
you,
if I can
sister.
interject here. Let me ask a question. Thank you, Jeremy, and the rest for your presentation. Unfortunately, I missed last week's presentation. I hope to catch up with it. But I do wanted to get back to something that I find is very crucial to this conversation, which is the position of the Sabbath. I strongly disagree with the whole idea of the Gregorian calendar determining a Wednesday or a Saturday. I think Robert brought up that it really is about counting 7 days continually without stopping. And so, if you don't mind, I don't know if Brother Jackson, if I'm able to share real
Yeah,
quick, I just want to share an Excel
sure.
spreadsheet, if you don't mind.
It's your time.
Am I able to do that? Yes, okay. All right, this is just a simple thing. And Jeremy, if you're able to guide me through this so that we can demonstrate to everyone how this works. From the time of creation, we have day 1, 2, and 3 that were without the luminaries. And on day 4, the luminaries were created. And on day 4 started the count for the year. So this is day 1 of the year. And then you go all the way to 7. And then you keep going all the way down to day 364, which falls on day 3 of the week. The following day, which would be day 365, if we were to count all the way to the equinox, would be on day 4. And then after that, you would have actually the equinox on day 5 of the week. Okay, this is day 5, and you would have the equinox on this day. However, we will trust that because the year is 364 days, this would not be counted as 365, but it would be counted as day 1. And therefore, you would have day 2 the next day, etc. Okay. This is how you would expect things to work all the way to perpetuity. Okay. So you keep going this way all the way down
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
year after year. Okay. So
So
how do you explain, and this is day 1 of creation, there is no Gregorian calendar whatsoever. Assuming, for instance, that you're stating that, okay, I think I heard something along the lines of Saturday was actually day 1 of creation, day 1. Okay, let's just put it that way and call this day
so
here. Okay, let me just finish this up so that I can get this to rest. Okay, so let's call this Saturday, and it's just definitions, right? So we're calling this day 1 Saturday, then day 2 is Sunday, however you want to call it, and Tuesday is day 4. All right. But it's just going to be the same thing. So if you start your year, let's say on day 4, it remains the same all the way through year after year after year. And so in the Gregorian calendar, what we would call day 4 would actually be called Tuesday. But it would continue on forever without a change. So why is it that y'all hold on to this whole idea that somehow Saturday is an invented thing? This weekly cycle determines the Sabbath.
so as we have shown, we have Genesis 1, 1 through 2. The counting starts at nothing, starts at 0.
Okay.
So if
It
you did
starts
you
at 1.
so please let me respond.
Mhm.
So if we count using your method, each each year you're going to lose a day every single year from the Tekufa.
Correct.
So taking that into account, your first fruits of wheat and barley is going to fall in the winter 20 years, 30 years down the road. And it's not going to be lining up with the heavenly markers that we see. So how do you compensate for that?
Okay, so
You would have
if
to
I may
add a
respond to that.
week, which does not exist in any of the scriptures anywhere. So if you saw here in Jubilees, we showed that the yearly Sabbath is going to be divided. We see that the scroll 4Q394 is telling us after the last Sabbath of the year, a day is added. This is going to be our divider day that we use. This is going to keep us hitting the marks like Marissa had presented in the stars, which you can physically go out and observe for yourself each and every year. This is going to align with historical evidence. And my question is, whose calendar is really moving? So if March 20th is the equinox, and then you're coming back around March 19th is going to be your head of the year. Then you come back around March 18th, and you come back around, and so on and so on and so on. So we have the first fruits of wheat and barley in the springtime because that's when the harvest is. If we let that float anywhere else, it's not going to line up. Not to mention, if you're just using a running on 7-day week, we are going to go against scriptures because Yahuwah says it's his signs that are determining these things. So Jubilees 2, verse 9, the sun is going to be the sign. Jubilees 2, verse 21, he gave us a sign in the heavens on which day we should guard the seventh-day Sabbath. That sign is going to be the spring Tekufa, which is marking day 4 of creation week. Day 4 is going to be like on the menorah branch, the fourth branch. The fourth branch is the longest, straightest branch. 3 branches later, you have the seventh-day Sabbath. That's exactly how it works. And just like on the menorah, we see the 3 prior branches, they're curving one way. It gets to branch 4, the straight branch. After the straight branch, it starts curving the other way. This is exactly the same thing we see if we track the tekufas. So the menorah plays a very important factor in this. The Dead Sea Scrolls are showing us we absolutely do have a day that is added in the year and not counted after the last Sabbath of the year. So we also have Lamentations 2, verse 6, which is speaking how the Sabbath day was lost. So if the Sabbath day was lost, how can it be lost if it was just a continual 7-day cycle each year? They would just know to count 7 days. They would never lose it. But Yahuwah himself said he made them be lost. That doesn't happen unless there is a division of the years. So Yahuwah works in divisions. He divides the day from the night. He divides the weeks. He divides the months and the seasons. So therefore, it's only obvious each year is going to be divided as well. Yahuwah does not run on and on and on and on with his calendar and cause all this confusion and say, well, we're just going to stick to this Wednesday because, we think it just is a 7-day running on week. Well, the problem is that is the problem. We have to start a count like Yahuwah did. Genesis 1, 1 through 2. He started at nothing, creation, 0, divider
But
day.
it's not a day, Brother Jeremy. That what you
Yeah.
call a day 0 is not a
Yeah.
day because he starts
So
counting at day 1.
And as
it
you
actually,
said, we don't want to run on and on and on and on. So our time is up. I really hate to interrupt, but that's what I'm bound and destined to do. So I want to thank you all for being here. We'll take it up. We'll take up the calendar again tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, same
yeah,
time, same place. And we love each other, don't we? See you tomorrow night.
absolutely. Thank you, brother. Thank you.